It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebest. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you're listening to us on the radio. Maybe you found us online. Regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, click subscribe, and better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you would just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career, 30, 40 plus years, saving, having an identity, having a schedule, having this thing that makes them go around and then shutting it off on Retirement Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our series on optimizing retirement. Today, we cover the foundation of meaning, which is purpose. Purpose is defined as the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. It's your human life value and the bridge from your life that you live to the meaning that you so desire. In this podcast, Ben explains how purpose is critical not only in retirement, but in the life of everyone, no matter their age. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, we are back and we are continuing this mini-series on optimizing retirement. And today we've got a show that really is going to kind of piggyback off of the last couple of shows, and we're going to dig deeper into this idea of meaning. So a really foundational, important message for you folks coming up on the podcast here today. Before we get started, I want to let you know we have a brand new Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Join a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. Look for more tips on living repurposed, Facebook Lives, Q&A sessions. Join today by going to Facebook and searching Becoming Repurposed. Again, go to facebook.com, search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement, click join to be part of this growing community of people that are ready to make retirement everything it was supposed to be. Ben Tejas joins me on the show here, Ben, and this is kind of the fourth show in a row we've done kind of on this topic about optimizing retirement. Several episodes we talked about the ant and the grasshopper, and that was really the setup. That was describing two kind of paradigms, outlooks on retirement. Some that look at retirement as a way that we work, we put our head down. That was the ant. The grasshopper kind of lived for the day, and we talked about how both of them were correct, but both of them were kind of incorrect as well.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that episode a lot in some of the people I've been working with, and I would say generally, Jared, I see a lot more ants in the world, and maybe that's because of the in the financial business or the coaching business as we work through successful retirees. It's many times so difficult for people to enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about life deferral with people all the time, and the financial business, retirement planning. Everybody's always talking historically about save, put money away for the rainy day. Almost becomes a scarcity, like I'm holding on to everything feel, and that to me is that ant taken to the extreme. And if you remember that episode, the ant, when you look at their life expectancy, it's 3 months. It's he missed out. That ant missed out on life because he was preparing too much. Now, on the other side, the grasshopper, of course, we know the end of the story, ended up out in the cold that winter. So there needs to be a balance, but I know I deal with a lot more ants, and helping them realize that they've done enough, and they've been successful, and now just getting them to turn that switch to really enjoy time and the new time they've found in retirement. It's a tough thing to do.
Coming up in the weeks ahead, we're going to cover some of that kind of ideology that retirement planning is purely about the numbers. And in many respects, it's good. Obviously, saving is good, but it can develop or kind of suggest this scarcity mentality, and that's very dangerous in a lot of ways, and it holds back on our life. So again, that's how that ties into this idea of optimizing retirement. Then we talked about the time, money, health conundrum, and how you have to have a certain amounts of all three to really enjoy life. But at any given point in life, we have different combinations of those three, and this becomes especially important when you get into maybe the second half of your life, where, as we mentioned, your health starts to decline, and that is the one that has the biggest effect on your life, right, Ben?
Yeah, I think that's the one, regardless of how much time and money you have. If you don't have health, really you don't have anything. And, I think sometimes we talk about that kind of in passing. There's people listening probably today that have gone through major health scares, or maybe you're in the middle of a problem right now with your health. And it is tough, and it's tough to see that. And I think making the most of your life in those times, you start to realize just how important and just how big of a deal your health is.
Well, health is important. And again, when we say time, not to say that time isn't important. And again, we're talking kind of just free time throughout the day. And Ben, we fall in the category of kind of that middle age group where that's the asset that we are missing out on the most right now. We just, it's tough. We both have young families, and the propensity is to, this is a time in my life where I'm very proficient, and I'm making a little bit more money and just saving more. But it's you have to fight the pull to want to defer those experiences because of work or career or whatever that can be. And that can be a tough thing to do, because lots of times, like we mentioned, you get older, you get to retirement age, and your health is now suffering. And at that point, it's very difficult to have an optimal life at that point.
Yeah, it is. And time, we know, is when we're talking about it in this situation, we're talking specifically margin, right? We're talking about room in our lives between work and all of our daily obligations.
Our daily time.
These things that we have to do. And I just know right now I've got daughters that are just starting school again, and I got a junior and a freshman, and I'm like, where did all of this, the time go? And there's so many times in my raising them where I'm like, I wish I could go back and just have a little bit more of that in my life now, because I'm feeling I'm getting a little bit more margin now as they've gotten older. But now I'm, I can't go back and redo the time with them.
And that was the point we were trying to make. If you live this, someday, one day mentality, whether it's with your money or your time for experiences in retirement, that's not optimal either. And so we walked away with that episode saying, if you truly want to optimize your retirement, you have to optimize your life right now. I did a video on Facebook Live later that day after we had actually taped that podcast. And I proposed the question, what is the best age? And what I said in that video was the best age is right now, the one you're in right now. Never live in this someday mentality. Again, if you're our age, me and Ben's age, and in your 40s and maybe younger, and you say, I'm going to wait to live until I'm retired, boy, that you are setting yourself for a suboptimal life in retirement, and certainly a suboptimal life right now. And that was the point we were trying to make. So last week we talked about 3 ways to find meaning, and I think that this is an important, really important topic. We'll discuss it here briefly here before we get into today's show. But we came up with 3 ways. Ben, let's cover those briefly.
Yeah, the first one was, I've always believed that serving is a key way in finding meaning. And, we know that, we're created and God gave us certain gifts and talents. I know, anytime I sign the book Repurposed, I'll put a Bible verse in there. And I almost always, my go-to is 1 Peter 4:10. And that verse has become so important to me. And because it talks about the gifts we've given. And I'll read it. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. I love that verse because it highlights how different people are and how different gifts we have. But yet, why do we have them? You were given them so that you can serve others. And knowing how important long-term meaning is and how that only comes through serving others, right? I mean, we can't be significant and have meaning if it's all about ourselves. So serving is a key component to that.
We see a lot of retirees really grab a hold of this idea of serving, and they are usually the ones that are I mean this in a nice way. They're almost busier sometimes in retirement than when they were working, but they're more fulfilled than when they were, perhaps, because they're doing it on their terms. They're able to get involved in all the things that they want to do and go to the events and whatever that, and learn the new things. And man, if you find meaning from serving, retirement's going to be spectacular if you can really grab a hold to this idea.
Yeah, and meaning. I mean, even in our stage of life, Jared. I mean, you and I talked about this before going on the air today. Our best days, and for some reason, it's easier to find at work because there are people in my path every day that I have to serve. The team here, we got to serve them. We know that people do better when they're being served by their leader. So, I'm doing that, and then it's our clients that come in. It's very easy for me to serve them because that's my job.
Right.
Well, if I didn't have my job, my career, and this group of people, it just gets harder and harder to find those people. So being a person who notices others who can be served and finding them and then tying my talents and gifts into serving them in retirement, huge in finding meaning.
The second way that people find meaning that we discussed last week was experiences. A lot of people, again, that's why it's enjoyable to travel, see new things, have new experiences, have the bucket list items, spend time with kids and grandkids and do amazing things. That's another spectacular way that people find meaning in retirement and should. That's, again, why not?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes people hear our message and they're like, man, this sounds like this sounds like a lot of work, right? Just being repurposed in retirement. I just want to experience. I want to travel. I want to spend more time with my family. That's all good, and that is part of finding meaning. I think over time, I think you can indeed find a very good meaning. Will it last forever? The memories will. I think that's a key component of experiences. We're not talking about you just going off on your own somewhere, but we're talking about doing it with people and family and enjoying that time. It becomes more than just seeing the world, but seeing the world and experiencing with other people, and that makes a lasting experience become really something that can give meaning.
Yeah, you bet. The last way that people can find meaning is in suffering. We talked a lot about how when people go through difficult things, whether it is voluntary or involuntary, maybe health problems, a lot of times people will find very deep, significant meaning out of those experiences as well.
Yeah, I think the hardest times sometimes give us the most meaning. I know in my personal life, I talked about that in last week's show. The biggest, I think, lasting memory of the last 20 years for me has been what my daughter walked through after she was born and the first 5 years of her life. Man, that gave just incredible meaning in that suffering that we went through. And I know why. It's because it brought me closer, number one, to my wife, and it brought me closer, number two, and more importantly, to God. I think God is always, and we ended last week's show talking about this specific verse in Acts where it says, it's Acts 17, verse 27. It says, God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is never far from each one of us. And that was something I learned in that time. It was God was there the entire time. But when I tend to take things on my own and I tend to walk in, I've got everything just fine. When the world is good and perfect and, business is good and the family's good and there's really no hiccups and pain points, yep. I can do things pretty well on my own. However, when I go through hard things or when I walk with others in their hard times, you tend to look back at what is going to get me through that. It's ultimately my relationship with Christ. It's ultimately, my Creator not being far from me and searching for a relationship with me, right? Yep. We're created for that. Then we find meaning when we're walking with him. And unfortunately, sometimes it does take walking through hard times to bring you closer to God.
Well, I'm even as you're talking here, I'm kind of trying to map this out in my head. Meaning is the ultimate goal. These three ways that we just mentioned, whether it's experiences, serving, or suffering, that's kind of the starting point. Though those things in and of themselves may be meaningful, but it doesn't. they're kind of bridges to the ultimate meaning, which is, again, a relationship with our Creator, and that's what you're talking about. So again, this idea of meaning is a big one, but I think it certainly bodes the time that we're giving it, because it is just such an important topic, especially to retirees.
Yeah, Jared, I almost forget what this show is about. We're almost ready to end this today's show,
Right.
but I think sometimes we get into recovering these last shows and these ideas come up, and I think they're important enough. I just want to tell people they go back and listen to a few of those last couple shows we've had. Go back, look at some of our past material, because it all comes at, we're talking about things that typical people in the retirement advice space are not talking about. Mm-hmm. So we're passionate. We love talking about this stuff, but we use this as pretty much a recap of the last couple shows.
Right.
We're going to give you a few new ideas here, but I think the key is if you're listening to this, and you're like, oh man, something is hitting me. Mm-hmm. Go back and listen to some of those shows, because there is a ton of information.
We're on iTunes, by the way. We're not keeping track typically, but I think this is episode 102. So if you actually add up all the minutes that we've been on the air, taping shows, I think it's up to about 2.5 days worth of content. So
that'd be a long 2.5 days.
Maybe don't binge listen to everything, but yeah, there's a lot of good stuff back there. Please subscribe and go back and listen to some of those shows. Today, Ben, we're going to take this just a step deeper here, and we're going to talk about the foundation of meaning. I'm going to kind of give away the foundation of meaning, and that is purpose. I mean, it's actually baked into the name of your book. It's baked into the name of this podcast, that really, to have meaning, you must understand your purpose. That is, again, a foundational message that piggybacks everything we just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that we've talked about over and over, and will continue to, is remind people that, purpose comes from, and real, walking into fulfillment comes and is made possible by being part of a cause greater than yourself, being tied to something bigger than you are. Yep. And that is just paramount in our when we talk to clients, when we're on this show, that people remember that living a life where we can feel like we're where God wants us to be will involve service. It will involve some element of understanding who God made us to be and walking closer to Him so that we can walk that out.
What's interesting is I have some friends that are younger than me, and actually quite a bit younger than me. In fact, one particular friend, I think he's 18 or 19 years old. Every time that this show hits iTunes, he's like, yeah, as soon as I hear the ding, I listen to your show. I think it's great. And I'm like, you're like 18 years old. Why are you listening to our show? And he's like, I don't know. It just resonates, and I just like listening to it. I think why a lot of people listen to this show that maybe don't even have retirement on their horizons, because this is a concept that applies to everybody. This idea of purpose doesn't begin in retirement. This is something that we should be doing throughout our entire life. It kind of piggybacks off of the message of optimization. You don't optimize your life in retirement. You optimize it right now. And this is a concept that applies to everybody. You are uniquely created and have something to bring to the world that nobody else does.
Yeah, and you have God's given you an assignment, something that you will feel, you'll feel as if you're missing something unless you're walking into that. And don't get me wrong, there's been times in my life where I felt like kind of in that spot of, I'm a little lost. I'm not sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing today. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt today, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. When God starts to put the pieces together, and you start having more and more, and I'm not even going to say financial success, but you start to have more and more just confirmation of, yep, that person came into my life at this time and I know why. You'll start to feel that, and finding out, what that assignment is it's a hard part. But I think if you're open to, God's prompting and His leading, and maybe a few closed doors, you'll find it.
And I think we've all been in seasons where we've kind of been in that flow, and it feels something special. It's hard to put words on it. We've also been out of that flow, and generally you kind of know exactly that when you're kind of out of the flow of where God wants you, out of purpose, whatever you want to call it, it's pretty obvious when you're not there.
Yeah, and I would challenge challenge you if you're listening, and a great place to start is am I walking into, God's purpose in my life? Are you in His Word?
Mm-hmm.
Are you listening for what He has to tell you? Are you in communion with your Creator? Are you speaking to Him? Are you talking to Him? Are you listening for Him?
Mm-hmm.
I know in times when I tend to get out of what His plan for my life, it's not because He's went anywhere. It's because I have taken it again upon myself to think I know what's best for me.
No.
And when I take that step back and can realize, oh, you're starting to look like selfish Ben. You're starting to look more like the Ben who really, I know my wife doesn't appreciate. Then I can take a step back and say, no, I'm not being the person, the man, the husband, the father, the business owner, entrepreneur that God wants me to be.
Yeah.
When I'm in tune with Him by reading His Word, that's when I start to walk into that place because He's there, and I just have to listen.
And this is a conversation, like you mentioned, that is just completely void of the retirement planning conversation. And again, we've kind of joked off air, like we're the most anti-retirement firm that I know. Can we please retire the word retire, because it goes against everything that we're talking about here.
Yeah, it does. I think the reason why I think and why I love sharing this message with retirees specifically is because we have found in our society today where we tend to work, and we do find meaning and purpose in our work. Even if it's not necessarily your life's calling, if you're just in a job today, there's purpose in what you're doing, right? And I think that's what makes it so important for retirees, because many people walk away from their job, which did give them some level of purpose, some level of fulfillment, and they were able to accomplish things, serve others. And then they walk into retirement and they lose even that. Now you're at a spot where it's like, okay, I don't have that to turn to.
Right.
And now we're talking identity and who am I, and who, did I spend too much time, over my life working, and I didn't retire quick enough. I should have retired sooner. And you go through all of these things. That's why I love this message for retiree. But the truth is you and I listen to this, people our age, and you can grab a hold of a lot of these ideas and start to think, I need to begin to walk closer with God's, plan in my own life.
Yeah. And again, this idea of living with purpose, that doesn't begin at retirement. It doesn't end at retirement. It begins right now. If you want to live a meaningful life, you have to live with purpose. And again, as I'm talking this out, I'm kind of processing it. It seems like purpose is really that bridge, the experiences, the serving, the suffering. The purpose side of it is the bridge to get to meaning. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these things that we've mentioned, even in today's show already, are all kind of part of the same equation to get to the idea of meaning. But without the purpose, the serving, and again, we know people who are non-Christians or non-believers, and they serve, and it's great work. But like when you wrap it in a purpose that's spiritual and connected to their Creator, then it becomes even more meaningful. It's kind of the afterburn. It's the high octane gas that you throw on life when you live in a certain flow, and that's this whole idea of purpose. But again, retired, not retired, young, old, doesn't matter. This rule applies.
Yeah, it does. I think again, if we believe in God's Word, it says in there numerous times, again, going back to that verse in Acts, God made us so that we would want relationship with Him. He made us and created us so that He's not far from us. He's there. He's made us to search for Him. So if your feeling is a little lost today, you're feeling like, I'm not quite sure if I'm good doing, either maybe you're pre-retirement and you're just like, I don't feel right in my job or where I'm at in my relationship, or if you're in retirement or anywhere in between, be thinking, man, is it because I'm not walking close enough with God, and am I not seeking His voice in what I do every single day? And I think that'll give you some clues right there.
The last point we want to cover here today is that, and I find this really fascinating, purpose will make retirement look different. If you're living with purpose and you're looking at life, seeking your purpose and living it out, the lens by which you look through, it will make the other side look differently. That includes life, and that includes retirement. It seems like if people can get this right lens and look at retirement through the right lens, it looks different in a lot of ways, and people got to understand that fact.
Yeah, Jared, if we're looking at retirement through the lens of serving others and living in what our real purpose is in life, our trips, our golf, our fun, the enjoyment, those things that we've been looking forward to in retirement our entire lives will be better. They will be better. You actually might find out if you're living this way that you're actually very busy in retirement. You might actually be busier
Right.
than what you were before, but it will be so enjoyable. It'll be so meaningful, and just you'll feel like you're doing exactly where you're supposed to be.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation about meaning and purpose. If you want more information or a copy of Ben's book, Repurpose: The Untold Story of Retirement in America, just go to our website, retirerepurpose.com. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.